Okay, this is Spontaneous Miracles. And today I have with me Andrew Murnane. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Leonard, how are you?
I'm doing good. I actually like how your videos, how you present your videos on TikTok. You have 500,000 followers on TikTok, and your other podcast. It's really fresh because I think there's a lot of perspective that's fresh in there, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, when you say fresh like that, it is something I try to stick to in that sense, I guess. Like everything I've ever shared is simply things that have helped me. Like I don't have necessarily a goal of helping people. I just share things that have helped me, figuring if they've helped me, they'll probably at least help one other person. And that's really my goal at the end of the day. So things that I post, it's like it's very much things that I'm currently dealing with for the most part, or something I've dealt with in the past and things that have helped me, work through something, overcome something, deal with something, stuff like that.
Yeah. we have I have the same thing. Like at the beginning of doing this podcast, I was like the intention was different because I was thinking like if I talk to different people, I'm gonna get something from them. Like if I started last year talking to psychics, to mediums, and the energy healers, the new age tribes, and these are wonderful people. And then there's an expectation from my end that they're gonna give something to me, but later on I find I there's something shifted, and I think I'm just doing this because I enjoy doing it. I like talking to people, having different perspective. And maybe we can start with how you started doing, maybe your story. What's the story of Andrew? Like the thing I see about the people I talk to is that, speaking for myself, like it started with, I grew up Catholic. And I remember when I was a kid, I was drawn to the Bible, and I watched this CD of testament testimonies of people having near death experience, and they saw like the burning fires of hell. And as a child, when you watch that content, there's trauma there. and then at, and then mental health. I was diagnosed with OCD, and then there I went to therapy, and then there's a lot of spiritual seeking. I was into different kinds of I was into this search of, I don't know what I'm searching for, but it's nonstop until one day I just figured out, I don't know what's this. Maybe you can share how your story unfolded.
Definitely. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with me. I think everyone, it's interesting because everyone has their, unique journey, and it's all, different pieces of this puzzle that we call the universe. And I, I don't know, mine has a lot of, ups and downs, but yeah, I can just go into mine. So basically when it comes to mental health, mine sort of started and like the low point that I've been able to work through and kind of get over and has led me to everything I do now is through high school. I had probably a degree of social anxiety and just never really lived in the present moment and was constantly worrying about what other people thought of me, worrying about, potential future scenarios that existed inside of my head, and fearing what might happen, and fearing, the death of my ego. And it was all my ego, fearing loss for the most part, whether it was loss of self or loss of reputation or whatever. I realize that now. Back then I didn't realize what was going on. I was just caught up in it and didn't even realize that, I was listening to this voice inside of my head that wasn't mine. And it got to a point that I basically got tired of it. I never went to formal therapy, but I got to a point that I just basically got sick of living that way. And I figured there must be a better way to live versus being worried and nervous and worrying about what people thought all the time. And so I started, reading books, watching YouTube videos, researching, doing all of these things to figure out better ways to live. And it got me, and there's been lots of ups and downs since then, but it began with a degree of not caring what people thought, but I almost got caught up in this idea that I was trying to be someone who didn't care what people thought, as opposed to being myself who doesn't care what people thinks, if that makes sense. There's like a little bit of a difference there. Like I was purposely doing things that were like ridiculous, which can be a way of getting through and working through those types of things. And it's all part of that sort of journey. And then it led me to last year. Sort of one of the final things was I was worried about how people would perceive me if I put myself out there on social media and fully, went all in on social media stuff. And that was a process of realizing that it was something that I wanted to do. And that's sort of like a story in itself. But yeah, about this time last year, last July, August, I just said, fuck it, and started filming videos, put myself out there. And, it's brought me to this point now. So,
Yeah, I I resonate so much with your story because social anxiety is something that I also struggled with as a when I was a kid. Like and also the caring what other people think. It's a big challenge for me because I don't know. It's part of how society how this game of life is, because it's mine. Mind likes puzzles. Mind likes judging, and I notice in your contents, like I don't know. This is just how I see it. Like if I can make a summary of everything, it's about radical acceptance of what is. It's the big I don't know. I think this society has a lot of judgment, like judging you if body shaming, a lot of that's why anxiety comes with arises. And but your contents are fresh because it deals with perspective. Like one thing that I saw was the field of unknown possibilities. Like we don't know what's going to happen after, yet our minds are fixated in one thing. um, Maybe the question that comes up right now is you post a lot on social media, right? Like what are the common questions that people ask you? Like what are the most common questions you receive, maybe on a message or on a comment section?
hmm yeah, I get a lot of different types of questions, but especially when it comes to, and like the ones that I enjoy the most is the question of, you know, whether it's in the workplace or in school, like the comparison to others. And I actually, this one's fresh in my mind because I just got a DM this morning that I just sent a quick response to. And it was basically, it was this girl who I think she looked younger as far as I could tell from her profile, but maybe early 20s, in the workplace. And they have, it sounds like it's some sort of, sales type role where they literally keep a leaderboard in the office of like how people are doing and they're ranked. And she explained this and she was like, how can I not compare myself to others? Like you always talk about, don't compare yourself to others, whatever, like you can't compare yourself to others. Like, how do I do that in this environment? And so my response wasn't super long, but I just touched on a couple things, being that you like the way, hold on, let me try and remember exactly what I sent to her. It's the realization, the key thing was the realization that you can't do better than your best. So, and that was her response, was like, wow, that resonates a lot. And it's like, we think we have these comparisons to other people, and it's like that leaderboard right there is like a little slice of life and like the universe. It's like one single measurement, and school is the same way. And there are lots of things that are little slices, but we, for some reason in our society, just like the way that it's been built, we have put a ton of weight on those specific things, like how we do in school, how we do in the work environment. And it's just one tiny little piece. So I think the realization, and it may not be helpful for everyone, but that you can't do better than your best. It's like once you are working and doing your best at it, like at the end of the day, that's all that you can ever do. There is nothing beyond that. You can't become more than yourself. You can't be better than the best that you can do. So whatever happens after that needs to be accepted, or else it will be pain and it will be suffering. And just because someone is, higher up on that leaderboard doesn't mean they're higher up than you in life. Like at the end of the day, we are all equal. We are all the same thing. We can go into that more too, but it's not a measurement of her worth, which was the biggest piece. And I think that's what people get hung up on, is like these measurements, whether it's grades or in the workplace or wherever, are a measurement of their worth. And it isn't. You are always whole and complete exactly as you are right now, always, especially now. We are now. So we could not be otherwise. We can never be otherwise. But that was just one that I got this morning, that I liked that question, and going back and forth with her a little.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned a word there, suffering, and then a question arose, like, what do you think is the root cause of suffering? Like, if in your perspective.
Denial.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think, you see it with people. Sometimes people like to say, just stay positive, just smile, just be happy, just be happy. And I think there's a level to that is beneficial. Like, thinking positive thoughts can, manifest in your life. But it's also, if you think that if you don't think positive thoughts, then you're somehow a failure, then that's not living in reality. And it's not that you have to deny, or it's not that, well, I guess it is that you, like, acceptance is the first step to almost everything, but it's also not attachment. And there's sort of a nuance there that I've been dealing with recently. And it's this idea that, like, with denial versus acceptance. Well, what about when it comes to, if you're feeling sick? Like, a lot of times, and I like to play sort of mind games on myself, just like if I'm starting to get a little bit of a sore throat, it's like, no, I'm not sick. I'm so grateful that I'm so healthy and my entire body is healthy. And it's like, I think there's a difference between accepting that you're not feeling great, but then understanding that it's just your body not feeling great and it's not actually you, versus becoming attached to the idea that you are a sick person. And then it's like you build up this victim identity and you become identified with that sickness. So I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit here, but the difference between acceptance and denial, and the acceptance of how you're feeling in that moment, getting away from the sickness aspect, just whatever it is that you're feeling. Like, part of the human experience is to experience all the emotions, whether you're feeling sad or happy or not great one day and amazing the other day. Like, that is what is in that moment. So suffering comes when you deny those feelings and you think, oh, I'm feeling this emotion right now. I am feeling it, but I shouldn't be. And you need to suppress it. And that's how suffering gets built up, because one of my favorite quotes is, what you resist persists. So, when you are feeling those things, it comes up. It's super normal to feel nervous, anxious, worried, as well as happy, grateful, amazing. And it's normal to feel both. So whatever comes up, you accept it, and through that acceptance it passes through you. Like they're simply feelings, but it's the thoughts that you attach to them, it's the resistance of them, it's the attempt to suppress them, think they're bad to feel, that we've sort of been conditioned to believe that, which leads to them, not only sticking around, but a lot of times getting worse. And the denial of those feelings is what keeps them around. And that, to come back to your initial question, is the best definition I can give of suffering and why.
Ah, yes, that's very profound. I really like I really like the way you express it, because I don't know, just the other day I posted, I have this playlist on my channel, like the Diary of a Nobody. And then I just, whenever I feel like I want to express something, I put it out there. And then I said, it's like the only suffering that exists is the resistance to what is, the resistance to, I know people, the mind created this, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling anxious, then that's taboo to feeling happy or feeling joyful. And then
Mhm.
sometimes when you watch your video, sometimes automatically you question, like, what if sadness is not bad? What if anxiety is not bad? What if because with due respect, with all respect to the people who created the concept of high vibration feeling and low vibration feeling, I think there's no such thing, because every feeling is valid. It's there because, like what you said, it passes through, but ultimately it's not your identity. It's not who you are. It's just it arises because it wants to express that way. Just like when the rain wants to rain, or a tornado wants to come up. I I really like what you said. It's really, I think you have a lot of followers who are millennials, who the young generation. And what I like about the young generation right now, it's everybody's open to possibilities. Like, I think the story unfolding right now is, uh, people are breaking away from extremist rules. Like, like what I said earlier, the most struggle I have was the Catholic religion. I don't know if you also struggled with religion, or
I
because
grew up I grew up Catholic. I'm not Catholic anymore or religious
I
by
see.
any means.
the, I don't know, because I think that played a major role in I don't know, did it also like create like a struggle with you growing up? Because like with me, I go to confession weekly, thinking that something will, you feel so dirty because you're a sinner, you have so much guilt, but the guilt never ends because you keep confessing. Then there's authority, then there's people, there's fear about, there's a deity up there judging every action you make. And if you don't follow this commandment, you go straight here. And then, I don't know, did you also struggle with these kinds of things?
Yeah. Yeah. So my struggles were never as much with religion. I was pretty tied to it. I went to a Catholic school in middle school and high school, but my family, they're more so, I would say, nominally Catholic, not, more so, the Easter, Christmas mass types. But when you say, talking about confession and the idea of guilt and shame, and that's sort of my where my issues come in with it, and it's the idea that it's rooted in fear and these concepts that, if you do these things you will burn in hell, but as long as you could be the worst person in the universe, but as long as right before you die you confess everything to a priest, then you'll, live in heaven. And it's this distorted view that, like, oh, so you don't really have to be a good person. You just have to confess at the very end of your life and all's good. And it's like these ideas of shame and if you, because it's this dual concept, this concept of duality being separate from everything else, separate from God, as opposed to being the expression of God manifested as a human. It's the idea that, if something good happens, it's by the grace of God. Like, God gave me this, God helped me with this. And then if you do something, shameful or that you feel guilty about, it's you as the sinner. Like, you're the sinning human, and it's all the blame is on you. So you just feel this tremendous amount of guilt and shame. And that's what keeps the cycle sort of rolling. And it's also just very much an attachment to a very specific belief system. And, we can go more into religion if you want, but I think the reason, that it gets perpetuated and has stayed around for so long is this feeling of safety. People want to find ways to feel safer because, the idea that there aren't any answers and there is no ultimate truth that can be, at least no ultimate truth that can be expressed in words, is scary, and it's confusing, and it's there is no certainty in that. But with religion, there is certainty, and people feel safe in that way, but then they become attached to it and identified with it. And then when there are certain things in religions that, are hard and fast truths that are detrimental to society, and or at least to certain groups of people, like with like LGBTQ situation, with most religions, they are anti that. And yet, because all those people are tied to this belief system, they believe with their whole heart that it's wrong to be that way. And I think there just has to be a level, or I hope there can be more levels of questioning your beliefs and your belief systems and where that comes from. And I just filmed, I was the guest on a podcast a couple of days ago, and with this guy, and we were talking about belief systems and where they come from, and how important it is to at least not necessarily not believe in anything, but at least question where those beliefs come from. Because especially with religion, it comes from, you're born into it. It's not like there was a bunch laid out there for you and you're like, oh, that one sounds good, I'm gonna do that one. It's like, no, you didn't really have a choice in it, and yet it becomes a major piece of your identity for a lot of people. And I don't know. So I guess just the questioning of beliefs, I think, is extremely important, and where they come from.
Yeah, I like everything you said. It's how my life unfolded in that way, because ultimately we don't know. Ultimately, like if
Mhm.
you question and question and question, like how do you talk? You don't know. You talk, but it just happened. You just I
Mhm.
don't know. I there's because I tried a lot of things. I did ayahuasca, I did plant medicine, I did different things, and then I went back to, I really don't know what's this. I really do not know what. And yet I thought that was a curse, because I have set of friends who are religious. I have set of friends who are in the New Age tribe, and I have set of friends who are in the radical non-duality aspects. There's no, like what Jim Carrey was saying. There's no me. There's no self. You do not exist.
Mhm.
Our Alan Watts, and I feel like I'm in the middle. I'm confused. What? Who's saying who? Who's saying the truth?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when you realize there's no ultimate truth, because the finite mind cannot really comprehend the vastness of the universe, then I feel like that's a blessing, because you're open to the infinite possibilities of anything.
I do. I agree with you fully that I think in our society, in our cultures, it's to say I don't know and I'm not sure is like the worst thing you can ever do. I disagree with that completely, but in school or in the workplace, it's like saying I don't know. It makes people think less of you at times, but so instead they prefer you to just bullshit an answer. And it's like, where is that getting anyone? Like, why? Whoever said it was a bad thing to not know? And I think that's where true knowledge comes from, is holding on to the idea that you're not sure of anything. I'm not sure what's real. I don't even know if I'm Andrew for sure. I'm coming closer to the feeling that I'm not. It's like this extreme identification with self is where a lot of negative feelings stem from. It's like, when have you ever gotten anxious about something that isn't related to the self and the idea that you are this human? I can't think of any. So coming to the realization that maybe you're not, maybe you're just aware of them, just experiencing them, but you're not them. What really is the difference between the human and their environment, if the environment is impacting them and they are impacting the environment no differently, and you're aware of both of them? Like, where is the line drawn? And if it's at the skin, isn't that just an illusion, because the skin is made up of the same particles and molecules as everything around it? So I've been digging into that stuff a lot recently, the last 2 months or so, and it's been very, very interesting, because if you're not this human character, this meat suit, then you don't really there's not as much, if anything, to gain or lose. And that's all that fear, worry, desire are the fear of, this type of loss in the eyes of the universe, or this feeling of gain and becoming more. But it just, all of those things just deepen this identity with self. And I think maybe the realization that there is no self might be the key, or at least very helpful.
Yeah. it's I think that is one of the root cause of suffering also, like when you're too identified with the self, with the history of the person, or with everything. Like you think, like, what if you're not who you think you are? Like, I remember one of your videos, who are we? And not many. I feel like asking you, like, what did you also struggle with existential? Like with me, I'll tell you a piece of my story. Like, one of the most difficult existential crisis I had was the question of, do we have free will or not? Like, when I say, when you experiment, like, I will think of blank. You don't know what that blank is. Something will pop up, and it's not you creating that. Like, I will think of the color blank. Something will come up, but it's not you create. So I was like, so if there's no free will, then I'm just life's puppet. Life is, so if life wants me to be a criminal, or life wants me to throw me in jail, like, or if life wants me to die tomorrow, then I have no say in that. I have no choice. But then it feels like I'm making the choice. And it took me a lot of crisis before, like, I don't care anymore. I don't care about that question, free will or no free will. But I don't know, do you also have like that existential crisis?
Definitely. I go back and forth about free will quite a bit, and I do have a take and some thoughts on it for sure. And so you mentioned life's puppet, feeling like your life's puppet. And I think from my understanding is that we're not life's puppet, but we are life. And depending on the perspective you take, there is or there isn't free will. And I think the free will aspect is that we are unified life, the universe, source, however you want to describe it, that decided, I don't know if decided is the right word, but it basically, we'll just use it, decided that it wanted to experience form. And then it wanted to create this illusion of separateness for no reason besides to experience it, and eventually come back to the realization that we aren't separate and there is no separation. So the free will is that we, us, you and me, being the same universal conscious awareness, chose to essentially divide or create this illusion of separateness. And now there we have built up, these ego identities that we are separate when it's all just this massive illusion. So from that aspect, there is free will because we are the embodiment of that free will to create this illusion, to experience it. But if you look at it from the self, the illusory self, I don't think there is free will for the self. Like Andrew doesn't necessarily have free will, because if you think about it, what causes any decision that you ever make outside of your past experiences and your DNA and your subconscious programming? And if those, and did you have a choice in those things? Did you choose your DNA? Did you didn't choose your parents or your upbringing or your subconscious programming? And if those are all of the things that are deciding what you decide, then do you have a choice? But even though if we don't have a choice, I also don't think that it's necessarily the best way to go about things for a lot of people, because they get into this existential dread and thinking like, oh, well, if I don't have a choice, I might as well not do anything. And it's like, okay, but you also didn't have a choice to think, oh, if I don't have, a choice, then I shouldn't do anything. Like that was what you were always going to think. Like me picking up this can of sparkling water, like right now, everything leading up in my life that led up to me being on this podcast, talking about this idea, and then using this as an example of like, that's a choice that I just made, but was it really my choice? So bring it back. Is it the best way to think that you don't have a choice, or is it okay to think that you do? And whether you do or you don't wasn't necessarily your choice either. But moving forward, I think it's very much okay for people to think that they do have a choice in things, or else they can get into this existential dread. But then when you look back at your life, everything leading up to things led up to that exact choice that you made. And just one more side of it. So when it ties into things like judgment, I think it's important to remember that there is no free will in the sense of the individual illusory self. And so it brings about this idea of compassion that, this person is acting in this way, even the most horrible among us. It was exactly what they were always going to do. And it's not that you should succumb to the idea that you have no choice. So like, why do anything? Like inaction is equally a choice, just the same as action is. But it does bring about, when it comes to judgment, this compassion for other people that, they're acting in this way. But, if free will is a bit of an illusion, then you wouldn't judge them as much. And if you traded, atom for atom, experience for experience with someone else, it's a good chance you would act exactly as they did, right?
Yeah. Oh wow. That was brilliant. There's a lot of clarity in everything you said. There's a lot of, I don't know, it's very clear and it's, I remember William Shakespeare said like this, it's a stage and everybody are just are just characters playing their roles. And just like when you bury the seed on the ground, it grows into a tree. It 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 doesn't have like a choice where where will, how many branches will I? But it you know that deep inside, beyond experience and words, it's all is well. Everything is happening exactly or unfolding as it should be, and that's one of the things I like about your contents. Also, is I remember you said, like, in a way, it's like the message of your of your one of your videos was, does the tree have a rule where it's a better tree, or it's living the best tree, or because humans, we have that self judgment to ourselves where, oh, I'm not living the best life. What if the best life is where you are right now? What if there's no comparison to another better? And that's where the pressure gets lifted off. Whenever, maybe when people watch your videos, it's something that I think people right now, a lot of people need, because everybody's pressuring each other. Everybody's like, you have to go to this school, you have to, and I for some, for a time, I was allergic to the word should have or need to or something like that. I
Yeah.
I was wondering if, I always ask this one, like the topic fear of death, because I think at the bottom line, it's one of the, like, there's a research that says public speaking and fear of death are the top two, the top two fear of most humans. I don't know if, what's your take on it, like,
Mhm.
how do you feel about death?
Yeah, it's funny you bring those two up because I think they're actually more similar than people think when we take into account the idea of the self and the ego. Because public speaking, if the fear is not that you will do an amazing job, the fear is that you will stumble on your words, forget what you're saying, do poorly, et cetera, et cetera. And in a sense, that is death of the ego. And death, as we see in the world, is no different. When you realize that you are not the ego, you are not this individual self, you are the universe experiencing itself, creating this illusion of separateness, and you are simply the awareness of this human meat suit. You know, Andrew starts getting worried or nervous. Who knows this? I do. I'm not nervous. I'm not worried. I'm aware that Andrew is feeling worried, but I am not this character of Andrew. Andrew is just what they call this human meat suit. And so death, and like death of the body, and the fear of public speaking being like at least a detriment to, or like a diminishment of this self. Like if you're afraid that if you do a poor job at it, that you will experience a form of death, and it's no more than the death of the ego. And death is also the death of the ego. So I'm not going to come on here and say that I'm not afraid of death, because these concepts are still, new to me relatively. Like the realization I had of like this understanding that maybe I'm not Andrew is very recent for me. Like about, it hit me about 2 months ago. But I think the deeper I go into that, the less I will fear death, because really it's not the end of me, it's the end of Andrew. And I'm not Andrew. So it's more so the death of the meat suit avatar, just like a tree dies and life comes up out of it, and we are aware of that. We will be aware of the death of humans and whatnot, and it will simply be the death of the illusion. And we will, once this illusion ends, we will inevitably go back to the realization that we are not separate, and that we are one eternal awareness, eternally now, as now is all there ever is, and everything else is nothing but an illusion. And this is where the play of form is unfolding. And that's all we are partaking in to a degree. So both of those fears are not so different. And when it comes to death, I think I do, I'm not fully disidentified from Andrew by any means. I'm not gonna, lie and say that I am, but I've gotten closer. And with that, I think that fear has definitely decreased to a degree.
Wow. Everything you said is music to my ears. I really I like listening to how you express it, because yeah, the death of the body is not the end of you. The Because if you notice it, like, this is how I see it. Like, when you were a child, you were like, when you were a baby, there's not much consciousness. You're not so conscious about everything, but there's this presence. You're aware you're alive. But then things change. Your beliefs change. Your thoughts change. The way you see things change. But there's an element that does not change amidst the changing. So, and that was the one that gave me the assurance that there's something here that's not changing. And if I use the mind to label that, the mind likes to piece puzzles, to solve mysteries. So, but when I'm just open to the possibility, then there's this assurance. There's a subtle piece that if this body form dies, something will continue, and something will persist.
And that's you. And yeah, when you say, as a baby, we are still in this belief, or we are nothing more than the awareness. We have not yet built up like this veil of ego. This illusion of ego has not yet been built up, which basically gets, pounded into us until the age of 9 or 10. And then we fully believe that we are separate and that we are this character fully. And when we're born, there isn't that. There is simply the awareness. And through it all, the thing that isn't changing is the present awareness. The present moment always is, always has been, always will be. And the idea, and one of the first, about 2 months ago, when I started to realize, like, maybe I'm not Andrew, something I realized before that is, what if this idea of past, like, that is basically where all of our fears and worries come from. Like, worry, anxiety is about living in the future, but it's all based on the past. We can't really worry about something happening if it's never happened to us, or at least we rarely do, or at least something similar in that way. So I started thinking, if, this moment is the only thing there ever is, and maybe I'm not this character, maybe I don't have a past. And, like, how would I feel if I didn't have a past? And I was just aware right now, always, and there was no past. There's still maybe some memories or some ideas that exist inside of my head, but they're not personal. They're no longer, things that happened to Andrew, or things that happened to me. Maybe they happened to Andrew, but if I'm not Andrew, then they're no longer personal, and they're just memories. So they're just things that I become aware of, seemingly seems like somewhere inside of my head. But if they're no longer personal, then they just arise and fall away. There's nothing to attach anything. There's no attachment to them anymore. So if I have no past, so if the present moment is the only thing there ever is, then maybe I actually don't have a past. And if I don't have a past, I feel like that, for a lot of people, can be extremely freeing, because that is how we build up this identity. And we believe that we are nothing more than the conglomeration of our past, and all of the trauma and shit we've been through, and all of the great things we've accomplished. Like, that gets boxed up into the idea of who we are, who Leonard is, who Andrew is. And it's nothing more than an idea. And we aren't that idea. We are not this human meat suit. We are the awareness of all of it. So if they start thinking about their past, then we aren't thinking about the past. We're aware that this human is thinking about something that happened in the past, but it isn't us. And so we don't have a past. And if you're able to, and I've been in and out of it for sure, but if I think like I don't actually have a past, and it's like it really like shoots you into the present moment in a way that's like, wow, like I'm just aware. I'm just the awareness of this human and their environment no differently. I'm aware of the computer sitting in front of me, as well as I'm aware that, Andrew's knee itches or something. It's an equal awareness, and that awareness is us.
Oh, yes. I like it. It's an equal playing field. It's a neutral awareness in everything. Like
Mhm.
there's no specialness to the awareness there and the awareness here because it's just one. I I was about to ask like my last few questions, but I don't know if I can ask you your take on reincarnation, or
Mhm.
because I've asked this to my previous podcasts. Maybe your perspective on it. Like there was a research of one doctor, I think, where he interviewed kids and they remember previous lives, and I was drawn to that last year. I focus on it with so much importance, not realizing it's just an aspect of reality. It's not like the whole. But what's your take on it? Like near death experiences of like, I don't know, remembering their previous life, the previous life of the person. Maybe.
Yeah, admittedly I haven't. I've read into a little bit of that. I forget that guy's name, but I have looked him up and read into it a bit. And quite frankly, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on reincarnation. Haven't done a ton of thinking about it, but in the sense of, if we were, say, reincarnation was real, like if we aren't these characters, and these characters are nothing more than a bundle of ideas and organs and skin, then if there were reincarnation, would we know what we were like? I wouldn't be reincarnated as Andrew. I would be reincarnated as the awareness, but the awareness is also you, and the awareness is everyone and everything. So there's may not be reincarnation of this in the sense that I die and then I become something else. If I am the awareness of everything, the universe aware of itself, then I am you. And if Andrew dies, I'm still everything and everywhere. So it's still attached to the idea that we are very much separate ego selves. And if that's an illusion, then reincarnation may not exist in the way that we think. And so I'm not sure. But then again, say for example, like it was real and there was this sort of ego identity that was reincarnated and the ego did exist in that sense, then I'm not banking on, given the vastness of the universe, being able to experience a human again. Like next time I might be a tree or, a little ant that gets squashed after being alive for 2 days. So I don't know. I don't think about it too much, but when I do, I just mostly stick to being grateful for being able to experience a human
Mm.
right now, because it's pretty cool. And we have a lot of things, we can do. And it's even with all how difficult it can be, working through the human experience. It is, when you think about it, pretty cool. And if you think about it, like we're just in this massive, super realistic feeling video game, it's not really that different than what we're in right now. And who's to say that it isn't? And I think, I talk about this sometimes, but I think the only difference between people thinking that they're in a super realistic video game and versus, being in real life is that there's less of an identification with self or fear of loss or internal dialogue going on. Like, imagine if we were in a video game right now, we would just be doing things that we enjoy. And, we're both, I think, right now doing something we enjoy. So if we were in a video game, we would be in the same exact situation. And it doesn't mean that in a video game, you can just, if you go out and murder someone, like, you're still going to spend the video game in jail. So like, that doesn't change. Or if you want to buy something, you still have to earn money in order to have that, to buy something. So like, that doesn't change. So like, what really is the difference? I think there's just less heavy identification with self, which leads to, the worry and fear and anxiety of me becoming less, or, the desire and greed for wanting to become more. And it's just that those sorts of illusions get a little bit quieter if you were to think of things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
Some people say you travel lighter. You're not carrying that story of who you think you are, and yet you're just enjoying things the way it is. Yes.
exactly.
Oh,
That's the key. That's what, there's been Buddhist masters out there who have said, they've been asked, what is enlightenment like? And, they'll say, well, it's really not so different. It's just that, when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm brushing my teeth. When I'm eating a sandwich, I'm eating a sandwich. When I'm doing the laundry, I'm doing the laundry. When I'm talking to a friend, I'm talking to a friend. So it is no different, besides just less of that internal dialogue and that thinking and fear and regret and worry and all of those emotions that only exist because of the mind and because of the identification with this self in this form. So there really is, like you said.
Chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Uh, yeah, I asked this question with, I think most of the people I talk to, but sometimes I forgot to. But like, if I am lost, this is one of my last questions. Like, if I'm a lost seeker, or I feel confused, what would, like, or maybe I'm suffering or in any way, shape, or form, like, and what would you tell me?
That's a good question. I think it's important, first of all, to go into that a little bit, not necessarily just go in with some blanket advice to figure out why they are feeling that way. I think a lot of that stems from comparison, feeling, especially what I see with younger kids, younger than me. I'm 26 now, but the 10 to 20-year olds with social media is the comparison to others and seeing everyone's, highlight reels out there and thinking that you are less than that, or comparing yourself to someone who just seems very happy. And if you aren't feeling the same way all the time, you just feel less and get depressed because of this comparison. And at the end of the day, like, when someone asks, like, how do you not get jealous of other people, the main thing that has helped me is the realization that I don't know anyone. I don't truly know a single person, even the people closest to me, because, like, good friends, for example, like, as close as we may be, I don't know what their family life is like exactly behind closed doors. I don't know what their past is like, and I don't know what goes on inside of their head. And that's the biggest one, is you don't know what goes on inside of someone's head. As much as they may say or look like they're happy or say that they're happy, you can never truly know, because they could just be putting on a facade. You don't know what's going on inside of them. So when you're able to realize that you don't know anyone, and even the people who seem the happiest and they might be super happy, and that's amazing too, but for the most part you don't know, and you'll never know. And even the person who seems the happiest may not actually be. They may be struggling even more than you are, and you're struggling because you think they're not, and you think you should be feeling that way too. And so once you're able to internalize this idea that everyone might just be struggling as much as you, it kind of at least takes a little bit of that weight off. And that's why I think it's super important, especially for people with platforms, to share how they're feeling and show both sides. I'm able to be happy most of the time, stay positive most of the time, but sometimes I have shitty days and sometimes I have shitty weeks, and I try to share that as much as I can. And for some reason, people with big platforms think that they should hide those things and not share, because people are coming to my platform for positivity, like I don't want to let them down. It's like, no, that's actually probably more helpful than any content you've ever created, because it shows people that they're not alone. And I think that over anything is that when people start to feel down, just going back to your initial question, they think that they're alone. They think that they're the only person who feels this way, the only person that's ever felt this way. And through sharing and through people being just more open and more vulnerable about their insecurities, about things they're struggling with, about things they're afraid of, people will begin, those who are struggling, who are doing it, in silence, will start to realize that they're not alone, and they're never alone. And that is more or less the key, I think, at least in my experience, is seeing people out there who seem like they have it all together, seeing that they don't always, has been more helpful than any, motivational quote I've ever seen.
Oh, the authentic, the raw, the raw side of who you are. That's, yeah, to me that's more helpful also, because when I see a teacher who's so perfect, the mind goes to like, I need to be that. I need
Mhm.
to be I need to be as perfect as that, rather than what if the realness here does not have a problem. What if the that teacher and the student here is just in the same playing field. Oh, thank you. That's a very good message. I I thought of it. I thought of asking this, like, if you have, if you can have an opportunity to put up a billboard that the world can see, with a one line and two lines on it, like what would the message be?
uh hmm I guess probably it's related to what we've talked about today, but probably something like, you are perfectly whole and complete exactly as you are right now. And if I were to get more lines, something like, there's nothing you can ever possibly do to make yourself more complete than you are right now, and there's nothing you can ever possibly do to make yourself less complete than you are right now.
Wow. That's that alone is a wake up call. If you feel unworthy, if you feel like you're having a shitty day or a bad day, because I think that's just the play of life, hiding itself in the play of unworthiness, knowing inherently that it's already worthy, but it wants to play. It's the energy of playfulness. So it wants to
Mhm.
believe it's unworthy. It wants to believe it's this or that. Oh, wow. Thank you. That's a very good one. Yes. Yeah. How can people follow your contents? And maybe you have your social media accounts, or maybe I
Yeah.
don't know if you're already like doing your one-on-ones, or how, I don't know. Maybe you can invite.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I do have a link in my bio for one-on-one stuff. I've not started that yet. I am going to very soon. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, but I've definitely been procrastinating with that. I've been traveling a little bit, and I'm moving back into I've lived in New York the last couple of years. And I'm moving back. I signed an apartment lease last week, so I'm moving back next week. Long story short, gonna start with one-on-ones soon after that, and a lot more content, a lot more podcast episodes, etc. But when it comes to social media, I'm on most of the platforms. TikTok is Andrew_Murnane. Uh, Instagram is A.Murnane. YouTube is Andrew Murnane. And then my podcast is just the Andrew Murnane podcast. And that's on Apple, Spotify, I think all the podcast platforms. But
Oh, yes. I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for accepting this invite. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the people who are gonna watch this, it will definitely help in any way, shape, or form. Really, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for having me, Leonard. Really appreciate it. Had a great time chatting with you.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.